It boosts the immune system, reduces inflammation, and it repairs the gut. And I don't know of any other supplement, as you know, that could do all those combination of things. So it's special in that way. It's kind of a superfood superstar in the nutrition food category.
Welcome to the Wise Traditions Podcast, sponsored by the Weston A. Price Foundation for Wise Traditions in Food, Farming, and the Healing Arts. We are your source for scientific knowledge and traditional wisdom to help you achieve optimal health.
I'm your host, Hilda Labrada Gore. This is episode 143, and I have two guests today. Dr. Sylvia Onusic, who is a researcher, nutritionist, and author, and Dr. Will Schlinsog, who is a board-certified doctor of chiropractic. These two are fantastic people, and they are experts on emu oil. Together, they can help us get a handle on what emu oil is actually, the specific vitamins that it contains that make it an awesome kind of superfood for our bodies, and how its particular anti-inflammatory properties may be just the thing that our bodies need to restore to good health. Before we get into the conversation, I want to recognize our sponsors, the Weston A. Price Foundation, as always. Be a part of passing health to the next generation. Go to our website and just click on the donate button to be a part of our fundraising campaign for our education, research, and activism. And thank you in advance for making a difference for future generations. And Walkabout Health Products. Check out Walkabout Australian Emu Oil from Walkabout Health Products. Their emu oil has the highest amount of vitamin K2 and MK4. Find out more on their website, walkabouthealthproducts.com. Welcome to Wise Traditions, Will.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on your podcast. I'm grateful to be part of your audience, I think, and teach them stuff about our nutrient-dense emu oil. It's unlike any other fat on the market.
Well, I am really curious how you got into this, because emus are birds that are only in certain regions of the earth and stuff, right?
Correct.
So how did you find an emu and how did you oil him?
I worked in an office with another chiropractor that had a employee from Australia, and she talked about it a little bit. I brought the idea home to my wife, and she just made contact with them via the internet and struck up a phone conversation. They explained who they were and what they did and what they wanted to do. And one of the owners, of the two owners, flew to Chicago, met me, and it started from there.
What are some of the things that emu oil is known for?
Well, it's highly anti-inflammatory. It's used primarily for arthritis in Australia. But as you well know, all disease starts with an inflammatory or with inflammatory process. But we know now that the study that they did, the Australian government using our emu oil from our farmers, that it restored the villi and deepened the crypts, healed the gut basically after it was damaged through mucositis-induced chemotherapy. They use chemotherapy to damage the rat's guts, and it restored the guts. So not only is it highly anti-inflammatory, but it repairs and restores the gut so the gut works like it should. And I believe that's the big part of why our oil works for a lot of different things. And I don't know of any other supplement, as you know, that could do all those combination of things. So it's special in that way. It's kind of a superfood superstar in the nutrition food category. Let's not call it a supplement. Let's call it a food category.
Now, how is emu oil different from other fats?
Our oil is different because of the type of breed of birds that it comes from. It's different because of what they feed them, because they keep them on their traditional diet, if you will. And then the way it is rendered is a process that was passed down from the Aboriginals. It's a proprietary process, but the main thing I can tell you is that it is a very low heat process, so not to destroy the long and different because, it's like a hibernating fat. The male bird sits on the eggs for 54 days and doesn't eat or drink, doesn't get up from that spot, basically. So, there's animals that hibernate, but they aren't actually doing a job. They are actually slumbering. This bird is actually doing a job. It's incubating the eggs for 54 days. The male sits on the eggs, so it lives on this fat. So it has everything you need, basically, to stay alive.
That's why you call it a life-sustaining fat.
Yes, absolutely.
Now, do you actually raise these birds then? Are the birds wild? How does that work?
Well, no, they are not wild. They're raised on a few farms in Australia. There's 4 farms that are involved currently. There used to be 3. They've got 4 of them now, and they've come together. There used to be 2,200 farms in Australia. Now there are 20. 16 of them kind of went in the direction of raising them like turkeys, big fat, feed them anything you can to make them, big and plump. And these guys kind of went in a genetics direction to get a stronger bird that makes stronger oil. The genotype comes from the outback. So those birds, they get 3 to 5 days of rain in the outback, and they live year round out in the outback. But we've brought that genetics from the outback basically to these farms. If that makes any sense to you? I'm pretty sure it does, hopefully.
Yeah, no, it does. And I'm just trying to picture. So you decided to raise your birds differently. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Yeah, it's sustainable. There's no chemicals, there's no pesticides, there's no herbicides, there's no vaccinations allowed on the farm. And the great thing about it is the oil that we get from there, it's a complex food matrix, and it's one of the highest naturally occurring sources of vitamin K2, MK4. And as I'm sure you know, that vitamin K2, MK4 is thought to be Dr. Weston Price's activator X.
That's right. And how does that K2, MK4 compare to what's found in butter oil?
Good question. We tell people every batch gets tested. And this is going to sound crazy, but when we started in this, we didn't know that it had vitamin K2 in it. But now every batch that we get sent from a year's worth of production gets sent to us. We get it tested, and it was between 39 and 4,400 nanograms per gram. We have results that are higher than that, but it puts it somewhere between 15 and 20 times more vitamin K2, MK4 than ghee or butter, basically.
Well, we are going to dive into what all those numbers and letters mean in just a second with your colleague and friend, Dr. Sylvia Onusic. Sylvia, thank you for joining us now. I want to ask you about something. We talked just briefly with Will a moment ago, and he mentioned activator X. Can you go into, first of all, what is activator X, and then what is the connection between that and emu oil and the vitamins we've been discussing?
Thank you, Hilda, for inviting me. I'd be glad to talk about that subject, especially Weston Price, near and dear to my heart. Also, you can read more about this on walkabouthealthproducts.com, where I just wrote a blog about it. But Dr. Weston Price, as many people know, was a brilliant researcher. He traveled the world studying native populations, but back at home, he was studying various vitamins, which were just being discovered at the beginning of the 1900s. And he already knew about vitamin A and vitamin D, sort of vitamin D, because it was still being, vitamin D2 was discovered first, then D3. So he was working with that as well. But he, in his laboratory, he had animals that he tested, rabbits and rats and so on. He worked with them with butter oil, and a lot of his little animal subjects were developed, they actually improved. And then he went on to use butter oil with children. He was a dentist. And at that time was the Depression, and there was very poor diets, and so on. So, he treated patients, and he mainly worked with nutrition. Of course, at that time they didn't have many pharmaceuticals to work with. And he saw cavities healing. He saw skull structures of people improving. He even worked with a Mongoloid boy and helped him to have a normal life. So he did a lot of work with butter oil, but he wasn't really quite sure what it was in the butter oil that was bringing about these incredible results. And he knew by process of elimination, no, it wasn't D, no, it wasn't A. So he wrote a book, Nutrition and Physical Degeneration. And the second copy of the book in 1945, I believe it was published, he added a chapter on activator X. And he never really named activator X, but he knew it was an activator of the other fat-soluble vitamins, like for vitamin A or vitamin D. He knew that you needed this activator to put them into action, in other words, in the body. Also, he wasn't familiar with vitamin E yet. So he called everything, that substance, activator X.
I see. So it kind of made sure the body could access A and D.
Right. It improved the access. It worked with it. And that's what he meant by activator X.
And this activator X is found in emu oil.
Yes. The thing is, butter oil contains high levels of vitamin K2. But vitamin K2 has basically 13 different members that have been isolated. They're called menaquinone. And butter oil contains menaquinone 4, which is the bioactive form in the body. When you look at research on PubMed, which is the National Library of Medicine website, mostly all the studies are talking about MK4 menaquinone 4 working in the body. And when we tested butter oil and ghee, we found that it only contained MK4.
Mm-hmm.
So that was actually MK4 is the activator X that Dr. Price found. We finally could put a name to it.
MK4.
Yeah, menaquinone 4, yes.
Oh, interesting.
And that is what's contained in certain emu oils, like Walkabout emu oil. It has high levels of MK4, whereas some others do not have high levels. So it's really a good idea to ask for the lab results, and some producers will show that to you. Then you know exactly what you're getting when you're purchasing emu oil.
So why is it that some emu oils have good levels of MK4 and others do not? What do you think makes the difference?
Well, there's a couple factors. The Walkabout emu oil comes from Australia, from Australian birds. And the emu oil was a traditional food among the native peoples in Australia for hundreds and probably thousands of years. They used it for a lot of purposes. So Will and Liz from Walkabout decided to try and work with the people that are raising the emus there to see what kind of oil they were producing. And also, Australia has a certain ecology. It has certain plants. It has a lot of sun. All these things, I think, contribute to the high levels of MK4. And they also, they tell me the genome of the bird. Some birds, just like humans, some birds will produce more oil or produce more vitamins than others.
That makes sense.
Yes. So those are the main factors, I think, that are involved in the higher levels of MK4.
Coming up, Sylvia goes deep on the properties of K2 and MK4. Get ready to geek out and learn a lot about what emu oil and different food sources have to offer us in terms of these vitamins. We pause now to recognize our sponsors, the Weston A. Price Foundation. Here at the Foundation, we are committed to your health today and also to the health of future generations. We are constantly conducting research to assure accurate health information. We communicate what we learn through print, the website, and this podcast. We advocate for your health and food rights on many levels. Join hands with us in passing health to the next generation during this, our fundraising drive. Just go to westonaprice.org/donate to contribute a gift of any size. For donations of $100 or more, we will send a thank you gift of our Wise Traditions Starter Kit. For $250 or more, we will send you a copy of Sally Fallon Morell's latest book, Nourishing Diets, as a thank you. And for donations of $2,500 or more, you can have dinner with Sally Fallon Morell, her husband Jeffrey, on their beautiful farm, P.A. Bowen Farmstead in Maryland. Thank you in advance for the gifts you give that help us pass health to the next generation. And Walkabout Health Products. They are the exclusive distributors of Walkabout Australian Emu Oil, the world's best fat. Walkabout Emu Oil is a life-sustaining fat and an ancestral sacred food of the indigenous Australians. It is the highest naturally occurring food source of vitamin K2, MK4, which is what Dr. Price called activator X, and it has at least 10 times more than any other food source. This vitamin, in its bioactive form, works at the genetic and metabolic level, and it's profoundly anti-inflammatory and anti-angiogenic. It offers essential nutrition for a lifetime of health. Go to walkabouthealthproducts.com today and get a 10% discount at checkout using the coupon code EMUWiseTraditions. I always thought activator X was just vitamin K, but you're saying it's MK4. What's the difference there?
Well, I'm saying it's MK4 because it's based on the butter oil that Weston Price used and our testing results, which show there's only MK4. Now, vitamin K2 has basically two parts. That's what I was kind of alluding to before I got a little tripped up on the MKs. Okay. Vitamin K1, which is just from plants, it's in green grass. And vitamin K2, which is the menaquinones from MK4 to MK13. MK4 is the only one not a product of bacterial synthesis, and the rest of them are produced by bacteria, either in a culture that you can put into cheese to make that particular bacteria, which does the work and makes the cheese. And the bacteria in our body do make their own menaquinones. But that's for their own use. The body doesn't have access to that. It seems like the body makes menaquinone 4, or you can actually get it through foods like the emu oil, goose liver, butter, ghee, organ meats, those kinds of things. They're high in natural MK4, menaquinone 4.
But chances are we're not getting enough.
And the problem is that's the very issue there, because since the 60s, we've been on a diet of no cholesterol, no saturated fat, low-fat foods. So I would assume, and I've seen much research that asserts that Americans are very deficient in vitamin K2, menaquinone 4.
Tell us your own experience with emu oil and what effects you saw on your own body from it.
Well, basically, I take it internally and topically, and right away I noticed topically, I put it on my face, I put it on burns. If I have an injury, it's very healing. It's it's a very nice cream for the face. And, it's not polluted with all kinds of chemicals. I really like it for that purpose. And I just feel that it's like any other food substance. You feel better when you take it. Mm-hmm. It is a food. It's not a supplement made in the lab. So that's why it's kind of so unique. So to me, anyway, I mean, looking around for a source of MK4, because that's the one that you want to put into your diet. If not by food and emu oil, then all you have left is the synthetic version, which is not at all like the natural version that's in food.
Well, and what I love about what you just said is we need to put the purest products and real food on our skin, because our skin is the largest organ in our body. So we want to make sure that what we put on it is as pure and nutrient dense as possible, as opposed to all these chemicals that are just going to toxify our bodies.
Exactly. Another thing that's really great about using a food versus a supplement, it's in a food matrix. So it has fat in there, it has polyphenols in there, it has the fat-soluble vitamins, it's got A, D, E, and of course the MK4. So your body sees this coming, it recognizes it. You're not going to have, thousands of years of trials with the native people using it. You're not going to have a sensitivity. You're not going to have allergic reaction. You're not going to have, some people are sensitive to a lot of these supplements like MK7. They report they have a lot of side effects, headaches and different things. You're not going to have that with a food matrix-based product like this, because it is a food. So that's the great thing of it. You're not going to get too much of anything that's in that particular food, because your body knows how to deal with it. So if you're not absorbing this much of this or that, that's because the body is programmed to deal with that nutrient in a certain way. Whereas when you throw a supplement in there that's a high dose, your body is like, what do I do with this? Mm-hmm. So it's something new. And so then you have the side effects. So that's why I like basically to have a food-based product.
And you can take it internally and topically.
Yes, and there is a lot of research on PubMed about using emu oil internally for cancer patients that get chemotherapy and have a lot of internal, damage from that, helping soothe that and helping heal that. There are studies. If you just go to PubMed.com and put in your or just put PubMed in your search bar and put in, when the PubMed site comes up, just put emu oil in there. And all the studies will just come up and list themselves, and you can take a look. Breastfeeding mothers use it on their breasts to help with, inflammation. And of course, the infants getting that MK4. That's all great. So there's a lot of different uses topically and internally.
I'm so glad you mentioned that site, PubMed, because the Weston A. Price Foundation is about what's best in food, farming, and the healing arts, but it must be backed by science. And you're a researcher, so you're not just taking this because someone told you it was a good idea. You've really looked into all this.
I have. It's my new hot research topic, and I can't tell you how many files I have and how many papers I've read. And I just keep finding new and more papers. I mean, the research on vitamin K2 has exploded in the last 10 years. I mean, before that, you really didn't hear much about it. It was just, okay, there's vitamin K2. Even the government doesn't make a distinction between vitamin K1 and K2. And, they're really out of date in that regard. But the research is just fascinating.
Well, I want you to tell me one more story. And if you don't mind, I would love it if you told the listeners the story you were telling me about the horse. The horse
Rocky.
story. Yes, Rocky.
Yes. Okay. Well, Liz Schlinsog is the owner of Walkabout Emu Oil, and I correspond with her quite a lot. And sometimes she shares really wonderful stories with me. And she was at the Weston Price conference in November exhibiting. And right next to her was Will Winter, who's a veterinarian. And then along came the owner of the horse. I'm trying to think of her name. Oh, darn it. I should have looked it up. But she was talking to Liz about her horse, and Liz has worked with horses, and she's very familiar. And she said, well, Rocky was becoming lame, and he was like a daisical, and he was depressed. And Liz told her, why don't you just try our emu oil? And Will Winter, who was, next door, was in hearing range, and he said, it's really great for inflammation, and that's usually related to laminitis and different things, that horses experience. So, why don't you try it? You don't have anything to lose. It's natural. So, not 8 days later, the owner of the horse emails Liz and told her, Rocky is back in action. He even jumped a fence. He's all happy. And she said, we've had him on antibiotics. We've had him on all kinds of medication, and he stopped the medication. And I started the emu oil. And it's definitely the emu oil. So that was like a really heartwarming story because horses that become lame, it's not a good end. Mm-hmm. So, and Liz also told me about wolves in her zoo and people write in about their cats and dogs, and it's just, for a pet lover, it's just a great thing to hear. Well, like I said, it's natural, so you can try it. You're not going to have any side effects, not unless you give him the whole bottle. Then he might get some loose stool, but, that would be it.
Well, this is fantastic. I'm about to go back to Will now and ask him for some more stories. But, Sylvia, this has been wonderful. Thank you for joining our conversation today.
Oh, and thank you so much, Hilda. It's been a real pleasure.
So, Will, I'm eager to come back to you because you said you had experienced some success with your patients. I want to hear, what did this emu oil do for them? What are some of your stories?
Well, I started using it in 2009. Didn't really know what I had. Originally, I actually got a bunch of bottles together and passed them out to people. Went up and down the street and friends and family and that type of thing. And they all came back and told me different stories about my knees don't hurt, my cholesterol dropped by 50 points, all this, my vision improved. I gave it to my dog, and my dog doesn't have arthritis, or can go up and down the stairs and that type of thing. So that was before we knew it had vitamin K2, MK4 in it. It was just emu oil at that time. I thought it was actually a supplement for arthritis. Uh-huh. So when I started getting further and further into it, then I started giving it to people that had things like Lyme disease or heart disease, and I started measuring the results from them. I did some calcium scoring tests on a patient and dropped his total calcium and dropped his calcium in arteries to zeros. A couple of the four major arteries, two of them dropped to zeros, and the third one had a very low number basically on it. I gave it to my brother who had Lyme disease for about 10 years and hasn't had it since he's been taking emu oil. I have a bunch of chiropractors that are applied kinesiologists that have sent me testimonials and sent me patient stories about people with Lyme disease. I took a high school athlete that came to me that said he was out for 6 weeks because he had a stress fracture. I got him back playing basketball from his stress fracture in 18 days. I had another athlete brought to me on a Thursday night who had to play basketball on Friday night, and he couldn't walk. I got him to play basketball 24 hours after I saw him using. And what we did with some of these stories, I took a Ziploc bag, filled it with about 4 to 6 ounces of emu oil, put their foot in that bag, and then I put a compression sock over the bag and their foot. Uh-huh. And I let them stay in that state from about 8 at night till about 8 in the morning, 12 hours of immersion in the oil and stuff. And it takes all the inflammation out of the injured area. And then it's easier to adjust. It's easier to work with. And both of those kids were high-end athletes. But it's gone in so many directions without my recommendation for cats and dogs and horses and stuff like that. I have a medical doctor who had a cat with asthma, and she started giving the cat emu oil in its food. She called us a month later and said, the cat doesn't cough, sneeze, or have any symptoms of asthma anymore. Wow. So we donated some to the wolves here in the zoo at the town that we live in. The wolves were old and crotchety and could hardly get around, pretty arthritic looking. we got an award from the city of Marshfield for restoring the wolves' health by giving them strictly the only thing that they changed was they gave those wolves emu oil. So we know that was kind of a game changer because we had a veterinarian and a zookeeper involved in that one, and neither one of them believed that it would have any effect at all. And when they saw the difference, they were kind of shocked, I guess would be the right word, basically.
I can see why. And you know what? I just heard a podcast recently about science, and they were saying that we kind of need to be skeptical when a product seems to work for everything. But you're not really claiming that. You're just saying that surprisingly, this had more impact in different areas of health than you ever suspected.
Yeah, and I believe those pathways are that, like those wolves, they're getting fed not good, nutritious food. They're getting fed probably similar to a bad dog food, basically. Heavy metals, bad parts, stuff that they normally wouldn't have in their normal, traditional diet or whatever. But when you take the inflammation out of their gut, and when you boost their immune system, and when you start to work on their joints through their gut, you reduce the inflammation systemically. Every cell in their body is inflamed, let's say, and they've got arthritic and sore joints. When you take that arthritis or that inflammation that's part of that arthritis and get their gut healed, they can now absorb anything that they eat better, basically. They can, they become more efficient, just like a human being that has a leaky gut. When you heal the gut, you know that you're helping the brain, you're helping the gut, and you're also helping a systemic inflammatory condition that may involve an elbow, it may involve a cervical spine, it may involve an arthritic foot, it may involve a knee, it may involve a hip. So yes, when you reduce systemic inflammation, people start to get better. But I believe that a lot of them are getting a lot better because it's also repairing the gut and making them absorb the nutrients that they're already encountering, basically, if that makes any sense. And I try to get people to change their diet, but you know what? I found that in 30 years of trying to get people to change what they eat is close to mission impossible unless they're really dedicated or unless they're really, really sick, A person comes in and thinks they can live on pizza and beer is not going to change their diet unless they have a real life-changing event and somebody like me stands in front of them and says, if you change your diet, you'll change your health. A lot of these patients that I talked to, the guy that had coronary artery disease did not change his diet at all, and 3 of his coronary arteries went to zeros on his calcium scoring test. So I know that compliance on diet is a much more difficult thing than just giving somebody emu oil and seeing what happens.
Mm-hmm.
So far, we've had tremendous results with a lot of different variety of, and I think all the things that vitamin K2 is involved in, from bones to wrinkles in your face to dental health and that kind of stuff, fertility, joint health, heart health, healthy veins, gut health. Vitamin K2 is involved in a lot of different things.
Mm-hmm.
This food is really good for someone that would have some type of cancer because it is anti-angiogenic, and you reduce inflammation. It just makes the person that has cancer more efficient.
And all those things sound amazing. I think our listeners are super intrigued by now. If they're not, I certainly am, and want to know more about it. So we are going to send them, or we're going to make available on the show notes links to resources, the things we've discussed, and to the Walkabout products. But I want to just wrap things up now, Will, with a question. If the listener could do only one thing to improve their health, what would you recommend that they do?
Eat less and eat good fats.
Very intriguing. Very intriguing. Yes, we are fans of intermittent fasting. And
you bet. Absolutely. There's more and more emphasis on the less you eat, the longer you live. I mean, there just really is. It makes the body more efficient, kind of like our emu oil. It makes the body more efficient. So, and that fat that's what Weston A. Price is all about, good fats.
That's right. That's right. Well, thank you for your time today, Will.
You bet. Thank you.
My guests today were Dr. Sylvia Onusic and Dr. Will Schlinsog. To find out more about Dr. Sylvia, visit her website, drsylviaonusic.com. And to find out more about Will and his emu oil, go to walkabouthealthproducts.com. Or simply go to our website, westonaprice.org, for highlights and resources mentioned in this episode, and look for the show notes for episode 143. Hey, and if you are enjoying this podcast, go ahead and subscribe through Apple Podcasts so you don't miss anything. You can rate and review us there as well. Every review lets people know that this show is worth listening to. And thank you. Next week, everybody, we're going to hear from Reginaldo Haslet Marroquin. And he talks to us about the chicken revolution taking place all over the world, actually. He is an expert in how to use chickens to right food inequalities. It's a fascinating topic. He kind of says we've got chicken raising all wrong, and he sets the story straight. You're going to find out about the difference chickens made in his life as a young boy in Guatemala, and how he is passing that wisdom on and making a difference for food injustices all around the world. You're going to want to stay tuned for that. Hey, and a big thank you to my team of podcast interns. Post-production assistants include Cynthia Castro Cohen-Enriquez, Deirdre Beer, Diva Rizvi, Melanie Ahern, and Ari O'Hara. Cheryl Heftelin helps with social media, Mary Hine and Olga de Villiers boost sponsorship and help with special projects, and our listening team includes Heather Carpentier and Victor Coseto. Amy Matias helps with transcriptions. It's a big team, but there's still room for you. If you want to help out, just email us at podcast@westonaprice.org. Last but not least, everybody, give me your feedback. Let me know what you thought of today's episode or give me ideas for future shows. And also, don't forget, I'm going to be in California later this month, here in July. I'm going to be doing some live shows all over the place. Go to the westonaprice.org website and click on events to get your tickets for the event in Malibu, Sierra Madre, or Murrieta, California. And then I'm going to be doing an event here in DC with Sally Fallon Morell in August, and that should be on the event page as well. So look for me. I want to connect with you. Follow me on Instagram at holistic_Hilda or on Twitter at holistichilda. I really want to support you on your health journey, and if you are a podcaster or a wannabe podcaster, I have a book coming out that you're going to definitely want to get. So stay close to me, subscribe to my website, holistichilda.com, and stay connected. Thanks for listening, everybody.
If you enjoyed today's episode, please share it with others. Post a link on Facebook or Twitter, or send a link to a friend in an email, or simply review Wise Traditions on iTunes. Sharing the podcast is one way to spread the important message of health through nutrition. Wise Traditions is brought to you by the Weston A. Price Foundation for Wise Traditions in Food, Farming, and the Healing Arts. The content of this podcast is provided for informational purposes only and is not intended as a substitute for medical advice.